Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, the Federal Executive Council approves 3-year fiscal plan to initiate process for preparation of 2017 budget, with state's intention to pursue non-oil-driven economy. South Africa's Supreme Court of Appeal reserves judgment on alleged MEND leader Henry Oka's appeal against his conviction for terror-related activities. Former INEC chairman Professor Atahiro Jega advocates independence of Nigeria's broadcast media, criticizes role of some broadcasters during the 2015 polls. And a massive earthquake in central Italy kills at least 120 people. Rescuers search rubble for survivors.
On Business News tonight, financial experts ask Central Bank of Nigeria to deal softly with deposit money banks that fail to remit NNPC proceeds to the Treasury single account.
Alan Sports News, Robbie King calls time on his 18-year international career after making 145 senior appearances for the Republic of Ireland.
I'm Linda Kibe, and from Abuja, residents of a community in Benin City, Edo State, count their losses after tanker fire ravaged their properties.
We begin tonight with the Federal Executive Council's approval of a 3-year fiscal strategy framework for the country. The document, known as the Medium-Term Expenditures Framework, kickstarts the process for the preparation of the 2017 budget. Briefing State House correspondents after the council meeting, the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Mr. Udoma, said the federal government will intensify efforts at pursuing a non-oil-driven economy. According to him, the federal government will target a $42.5 per barrel oil benchmark and production of 2.2 million barrels per day in 2017.
2017-2019 MTEF, the highlights are that government intends to intensify efforts in pursuing non-oil-driven economy. So we intend to intensify efforts to diversify the economy. We intend to continue with implementation of ongoing reforms in public finance. We intend to enhance the environment for ease of doing business so as to generate private sector and private investment. We intend to continue pursuing gender-sensitive, pro-poor and inclusive social intervention schemes similar to what we did in 2016, so it's going to be sustained, social intervention programs. We intend to devote even more resources to critical infrastructure projects, just as we did this year. So we'll continue to spend money on roads, on rail, transport infrastructure, ports, and so on.
The Emir of Kano and former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Muhammadu Sanusi, is advising the present administration, led by President Muhammadu Buhari, to learn from the mistakes of his predecessor, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, if past wrongs are to be corrected. The Emir, while delivering a paper at the 5th meeting of the Joint Planning Board and National Council on Development Planning, warned the present administration against continuing to blame previous administrations for the nation's woes, saying that what is important is for the administration to concentrate on putting the nation back on the path of progress. He goes on to blame past federal administrations for failing to diversify the nation's economy during the oil boom, saying President Buhari should not make the same mistakes. Part of his speech reads, "You don't have to be an economist to know that any system that allows you to sit in your garden with a telephone call, make 1 billion naira without investing a kobo, that system is wrong. It is unsustainable." End of quote. According to the Emir, there are many voodoo economists parading around the administration and advising the government, that many of them are not economists but demagogues. Transparency and accountability of public sector finances was a major highlight of President Muhammadu Buhari's campaign. In keeping with that, a few months into his administration, the president ordered that all monies belonging to the federal government be remitted into the Treasury Single Account, or TSA, domiciled in the CBN. So far, that account has pulled over 2 trillion naira. 1 year on, the twin issues of transparency and accountability in government finances remains almost dominant in a daily discourse. Joining me now to throw light on the subject, particularly on how the economy has fared in light of this policy, is the chairman of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, Mr. Bukar Kyari. Thank you so much for joining us on News at 10.
You're welcome. Let's
begin with the 2017 to 2019 fiscal framework just approved by the Federal Executive Council. It targets $42.5 per barrel oil benchmark and production of 2.2 million barrels per day in 2017. How realistic is this?
Well, I think the price sounds like it's a good estimate, because if one looks at the forecasts and the demand for crude oil, the price has been fluctuating on the mid to upper 40s lately, and therefore going in to 2017, $42.5 per barrel appears to be realistic. The challenge for Nigeria is actually the 2.2 million barrels per day. Right now we are, I think we're down to about 1.6 million. That means a lot of effort needs to be done in terms of the militants' incursion and all the vandalization going on. That assumption of 2.2 means that we will have peace in Niger Delta come 2017. And that may not be that realistic in this period of time. But if we double our efforts as a nation, I see ourselves to be more optimistic about that projection. If we go by last year's projections, we are off the production numbers by a mile, even though on the price of the crude oil side, it was more on the upside in terms of the averages so far in 2016. Therefore, 2017 price looks realistic, the volume doesn't.
It is realistic, or it is optimistic?
It's a bit optimistic.
It sounds optimistic.
Right.
Some say that the statement by the CBN that nine of the nation's banks are in default of compliance with the TSA regulation in foreign currency deposits is sending a negative signal about a system-wide stability in the banking sector. What do you think?
My views are two. One is that if a direction or an instruction comes from the regulator, and this had been over a year ago now, and it's a government directive, I believe it covers both naira and dollars, in which case full compliance is what is expected of all banks. And if you do not comply, there might be consequences, and the penalties, unfortunately, is something that the central bank can pull out and put that penalty on. I think when on the naira case of non-compliance, we saw a fraction or a percentage of the amount that were kept while the penalties charged. This time around, it wasn't a multiple of the amount that was kept, rather it was banning them from FX. What is not clear to me is that whether these banks are going to come back to the FX market, when, and what are the modalities. Those details have not come out in the public pronouncements that we have seen so far. And the effect of that links to the availability of dollars in the market. Are they going to be refunding in dollars, or are they going to be refunding in naira? That's another question that needs to be asked. Do those banks have those hard currencies in their books, and how will that impact their own business and then by extension, of course, the entire banking industry. Those, I think, to a certain extent, it's not that large sums of money. If you look at it, it's about 600 billion versus the total deposits in the banking system. So the effect might be less for the system-wide, but the effect is going to be grave for some of those banks that have a larger proportion of the number of the money that they have with them.
We appreciate your comments tonight, Mr. Buhari. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10.
Welcome.
The former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Tahiru Jega, has called for the independence of broadcast media in the country. Professor Jega was speaking at the second annual lecture of the National Broadcasting Commission with the theme, Broadcasting, Democracy and the Challenge of the New Nigeria. He says the broadcast industry has been characterized by a lack of fairness and hate campaigns. To change the situation, Professor Jega recommends structural and behavioral change to deepen the nation's democracy.
It's the second in a series of lectures organized by the National Broadcasting Commission with the theme Broadcasting, Democracy and the Challenge of a New Nigeria. As expected, the meeting drew the attendance of top government officials and key players in the broadcast industry. The Director General of the National Broadcasting Commission set the tone for the lecture.
The institution of an annual lecture to commemorate the setting up of the NBC is therefore in response to the importance of the institution, especially in the process of democracy consolidation, the expansion of the frontiers of national development, and the consolidation of the freedoms available to the citizens of Nigeria.
This is followed by a remark by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Information, who highlights some steps taken by the federal government in the digitization process and also condemns the role played by some broadcast organizations in the 2015 elections.
The broadcaster must use his power positively to stimulate and promote democracy, not to diminish it. Many of us remember the 2015 elections and how some of our colleagues exacerbated the political atmosphere with needless inflammatory and hate speeches. These, no doubt, created tension and gave our country a bad name.
And then it was time for the lecture. Taking participants through the history of broadcasting in Nigeria, its impact on democracy, and how the broadcast industry can be transformed into building the nation's democratic process, the former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, strongly criticized the role of the broadcast industry in recent times.
While privatization and deregulation has increased the number of broadcasting services and improved pluralism and diversity of media, it has done little to bring improvement in professional and ethical conduct in broadcasting or to minimize the influence of vested interests.
Panelists also took time to dissect the lecture delivered.
I think all of us, as citizens, as enlightened citizens, have that broader role in trying to direct all public commentary towards the public good.
I think that the public broadcasters should be allowed to collect the license fees, to thrive on license fees, but go off advertising. And the advertising should be left for the private broadcasters. That way, it's going to be a win-win situation.
The government must do everything within and possibly even outside its course to ensure that NBC and other regulators are given the free hand.
While building the nation's democracy calls for the participation of everyone, this gathering says it looks forward to see key players in the broadcast industry discharge their duties with all sense of responsibility to the people of Nigeria.
In part two, after the break, a federal government intervenes in the Nasarawa state labour disputes and asks unions to explore the option of dialogue. To join us again.